Today with us, we have Dr. Neeta Mehta. Ma'am is a pediatric physiotherapist. She's a handwriting intervention expert and an autism interventionist. It's a pleasure to have you with us, ma'am. Ma'am's mission is to create an inclusive society for children with special needs. She is also a handwriting without tears expert with a rich experience of 18 years and also the director of Sahas Physiotherapy and Wellness Center. Before I hand it over to ma'am, I would like to inform you all that the session is for 2 hours, 1 hour of knowledge sharing by the expert and the other hour where your questions would be answered. And post the speakers sharing, your questions would be answered and after 10 minutes, the chat settings would be switched to the host and panelists. Wishing you all a very happy learning. Over to you, Neeta ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for such a kind introduction. Thank you, Ms. Shivani, Ms. Lily, and the Ability team for again giving me an opportunity for this workshop. I will share screen. Is my screen visible, Ms. Shivani?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. So welcome to all the participants, and I'm excited in this learning process with you all. So we are going to talk about prerequisites to improve handwriting skills for children with special needs. And we are going to go through the basics of handwriting as well. You've already had some of the webinars related to it conducted on comprehension skills and its importance, comprehension challenges faced by children with special needs, strategies and techniques to improve comprehension skills. And today we are going to speak about handwriting. So what are we going to speak about? The workshop overview is insights into handwriting skills and its development, signs of handwriting challenges in children with special needs, strategies and techniques to develop handwriting skills. So why is handwriting an important skill to teach the children? It is a crucial developmental task for all children. It involves the skills of writing. Through handwriting, children are able to express themselves and communicate their feelings and opinions. So, this is my favorite from the handwriting bit, and why I feel handwriting is very important is when you are writing something down with a pen and paper, you are stimulating a collection of cells in the base of your brain known as the reticular activating system, or the RAS. The RAS is a filter for all the information your brain needs to process. It gives more attention to what you are currently focusing on. The last sentence is it gives more attention to what you are currently focusing on. Handwriting is a skill where you have to pause, you have to think, and then you have to put the word or the letter on paper, also thinking about the formation of the letter. So the whole being in the present or focusing on that task takes place, and it makes you more mindful and makes you more attentive. I think it is one of the biggest advantages of handwriting. Also, the hand movements that are involved in handwriting promote thinking skills, promote language skills, promote healing, promote working memory. Today, we are going to discuss about two key skills involved in handwriting in detail. One is called the spatial relation, which is the ability to understand the position of your body or body part in reference to the space that you are in. And visual continuity, which is also known as eye-hand coordination. It is the ability to move or scan the eyes in relation to the hand. Importance of the development of handwriting skills. As I explained, one is definitely focus and attention. Second, handwriting improves memory, learning, critical thinking, focus, creativity, coordination, and awareness. Now, let's go to understanding how handwriting skills develop according to age, and why this is important to all special educators, to all parents out there, is whenever we need a handwriting curriculum in place. When we have an handwriting curriculum in place, we have to see that age wise what a child is able to achieve and what is right at that age. So instead of starting something which is developmentally incorrect at a particular age, you actually compare to what is correct at that age and put the curriculum in place. For example, cursive writing keeps on starting at different ages in different schools, at least in our country. So not knowing when to start a particular skill, it hampers the child's development as well and creates frustration at the parents' end as well. So it is necessary to understand the development of the handwriting skill in children. So uh, between 2 to 3 years of age and at the end of 3 years of age, this is what you can consider, is that the child has developed pre-writing strokes. He can imitate vertical and horizontal lines and draw a circle. Grasp development can firmly hold crayons. At 3 to 4 years of age, pre-writing strokes can copy vertical and horizontal lines and circles without demonstration and imitate a plus sign. This will come around 3.7 years of age or 3.9 years of age. Therefore, I have taken it together as between 3 to 4 years of age. Copying skills can copy familiar letters. Tracing skills can trace on top of a thick horizontal line without going off the line much. Coloring skills can color within the lines of shapes and forms. One second. At 4.5 years of age, the drawing skills can draw people, is able to draw a simple picture of a person with at least 3 body parts. Copying skills can copy intersecting lines and simple shapes. For example, can also copy a square, an X, and a plus sign without demonstration. At 4.5 years old, coloring skills can color within the lines, that is, can color mostly within the lines in a coloring book. Copying skills can copy and write their own name without support. Grasp development, for example, crayon grip in 4.5-year-old. By 4.5 to 5 years of age, a child should have a fully developed dynamic tripod grasp, which is the way in which you hold a pen or pencil while writing. So the thumb and the index finger grip the base of the crayon or the pencil, while the crayon and the pencil sits on the knuckle of the middle finger, and the little and the ring finger are tucked neatly into the palm. This is where the precision movement for coloring and drawing comes from. As children develop the small muscles necessary in the grip position to originate movement from their fingers versus their arms to move the pencil. We are going to speak about the grasp development in the next part of the prerequisite skills in detail. But right now it is necessary to know that a dynamic tripod grasp comes in place between 4 to 5 years of age and not before that. So what does it help in is that you are using the fine motor muscles of your hand much more in a dynamic tripod grasp instead of your shoulder muscles. And whereas in a static tripod grasp, the shoulder muscles come more into the picture. Hand preference at 4.5 years of age can display a preference for one hand over the other and use both hands together well. For example, one hand holds the paper while the other cuts, or while the other writes, or while the other colors. At 5 to 6 years of age, drawing skills can draw a person with at least 6 parts and a face with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Print writing can write their own name in print from memory. What is print writing is not cursive writing, but writing single letters without joining the letters. So can write their own name in print from memory without looking at any model. At 5 to 6 years of age, also the child is able to print write most upper and lowercase letters, that is capital and small letters, and numbers 1 to 5. Copying skills can copy shapes such as triangles and trace diamonds. Writing skills can independently write letters and numbers and all the alphabets A to Z, all the numbers 1 to 10 without copying. Dominant hand can consistently use one hand as the dominant hand. So by 5 to 6 years of age or at the end of 6 years of age, your dominance is well established, whether it is a right hand, whether it is a left hand. Now, from all these developmental stages that we have seen, if we are seeing a child, what are the early red flag signs that tell us that handwriting is a challenge? Children with special needs face difficulties in drawing basic shapes, coloring inside the lines in a coloring book, holding a pencil in the tripod grip position, writing most letters and numbers, making recognizable drawings of people and objects, using a dominant hand for most drawing and writing. Now, handwriting challenges and what are the areas of impairment? So let's divide the challenges into three parts. So one is a sensory motor challenge, one is a cognitive challenge, and one is a psychosocial challenge. Under sensory motor challenges, what are the sensory issues that can come in the way of handwriting? What are the neuromuscular and the motor planning issues that can come in the way of handwriting? In cognitive challenges, what is the attention span of the child? How much distractibility is there? What is a memory retention for the child? And what is the self-esteem, or how confident is the child in the psychosocial challenges, and how motivated is the child to write? So when we view sensory challenges, there may be a challenge in the pressure gradient, understanding the pressure gradient. So when I'm holding the pencil or the pen on a paper, to understand how much pressure I need to give to write, such that either if the pressure is optimal, if the pressure is too much, then the paper might tear, or whatever we are writing will actually trace to almost the third or the fourth page. That much can be the pressure, excess pressure. Or the pressure can be very light, such that the writing is very light and not legible to read well enough. So understanding what is the optimum pressure gradient to write is important. And one of the sensory challenges that is faced by our children, not understanding that gradient. Eye-hand coordination may be an issue. So writing a letter or writing a word in continuity and coordinating the eye along with the hand movement may be difficult. Spatial relation, as I said, understanding in how much space the letter has to be written, within how much space, within which two lines the letter has to fit in, and whether the letters are dancing up and down. So again, this is a challenge that our children with special needs face, not understanding the spatial relation, not understanding form constancy. For example, when we write 3, 3 is written this way only, right? 3 is not written in a reverse order. So when you come across children who have a lot of reversals, even post 7 years of age, there is a difficulty in understanding the form of the letter or the number. So also there may be confusion between similar forms like B and D, saw and was, like the spelling mistakes that can occur on the same page. So not understanding the form of the word. Position in space is when I'm writing a word. And for example, I'm writing NEETA. When I write N, I need to know appropriate placing of the next letter E next to N. It doesn't have to be too much. It doesn't have to be very less. It has to be optimum placement. So understanding the placing of letters or words on the line. So position in space is spacing between the letters. And then is visual closure. For example, when I'm writing a letter or when I'm showing you, okay, what can this letter make? What does this letter seem to you? So this is going up, and if I go down, then it becomes an A. So even when I show you half the letter, understanding that this is A, and completing the letter. So that is a visual closure, looking at the letter, identifying what form it is and how do I close this letter. When I talk about neuromuscular challenges, it is related to shoulder strength one, because for any distal movement, that is our hands are in distal position, our shoulders are in proximal position. And we need proximal stability for our distal strength to work better. So our shoulder strength has to be enough to support our elbows, our forearm, and our wrist for our writing to take place well, for our writing to get coordinated well. Second is the fine motor skills, where the issues are there with the strength of the grip, precision, that is holding it in an inappropriate manner, or prehension, that is movement between the hands and movement between the fingers. Very, very important is postural control. When you have difficulty maintaining optimum posture, then you are not going to make appropriate adjustments to writing. For example, if I sit slouched and I write, then my endurance is definitely going to reduce while writing. I'm going to get very tired very soon because I'm not using the appropriate muscular adjustments for the writing. So maintaining an optimum posture, that is hip knee 90-90 with feet being grounded on the floor and an erect spine, that is the correct posture to write, with the forearm also supported on the table or the side rest. Speaking about motor challenges, or rather I would say motor planning challenges. How do I write? For example, there is trouble crossing the midline, difficulty writing in a horizontal plane across the midline of the body or the paper. Challenges in bilateral integration, that is holding the page with one hand and writing with the other hand. This requires bilateral integration, meaning use of both hands to perform a particular activity, use of right side of the body, use of left side of the body. If there is difficulty in holding writing tools and stabilizing paper. Difficulty with laterality, meaning I'm not very sure which one of my hand is dominant. Sometimes I'm using the right hand, sometimes I'm using the left hand. Inconsistent use of one hand for writing. I'm unable to plan. Like, for example, I want to write the letter A, but I'm unable to plan from where to start, where to stop, where to go, and how to make the letter A. Unable to sequence a particular letter or a word and execute letter forms, arrange letters to build words. There may be challenges in hand manipulation, meaning difficulty moving the pencil between fingers or holding the pencil appropriately and doing the correct movement. Cognitive challenges can be the attention span. The child may have difficulty in paying attention, maybe getting distracted a lot more, and therefore not be able to attend to the task. There may be difficulty in memory retention, on as it may also be related to motor planning though, that on how do I write the letter. Or for example, I have taught this letter to the child, but the child has difficulty retaining that information to reproduce it in the next session. And also there may be difficulty in generalization. Psychological challenges can arise because of handwriting challenges. The feeling of inadequacy affects the self-esteem of the child, and the child may then also lose the motivation to actually continue with the handwriting process. The motivation may be very low because the child finds the task very challenging. Now we will go towards strategies and techniques to develop these handwriting skills and to overcome these challenges. So specifically working on two areas of spatial relation, one also eye-hand coordination and letter language activities. Okay, so here we are the overview of strategies. We are going to talk about how we are going to speak about letters such that the child can process easily. These are called letter language activities, spatial relation activities, sensory activities, and eye-hand coordination activities. So here it is important, letter language strategies. You should start, like whenever you start an handwriting curriculum for any child, it is always advisable to start with uppercase letters, as they are more simpler than lowercase letters. Even in developmentally, we have seen that the curves to draw circle comes in later. The standing line, sleeping line comes earlier in the developmental stage. So it is better to start with uppercase letters. One, they are simpler because they always start at the top line. Uh, so if there are two lines, then even if it is a capital, all the capital letters will start at top. None of them are going to start at the middle or at the base line. So all the capital letters start at the top. Second, we can always start with teaching the letters which have standing lines and sleeping lines, which are simpler to teach before we go on the diagonal patterns or the curved patterns. So letters like E, F, L, H, we can start teaching them first, which have standing lines and sleeping lines. This is one of the techniques that I have found very useful in my practice. And this is one of also the sensory techniques that can be used before the child transfers to writing on a paper with a pencil. Use of a slate, and preferably a smaller slate, or usually there are rectangular slates available in the market. If you can divide it into half, then also it will be fine. Otherwise, this is a slate that is available through the HWT program. But I would prefer a smaller slate or dividing the slate into two halves. Over here, the first thing that they have shown is, first, the teacher demonstrates a correct letter formation. So for your example, it has been demonstrated the letter F. You will see a smiley over here. This denotes that this is the top of the slate. And this tells a child that all the letters are going to start from this smiley, from the top of the page or top of the slate. So the child does not make a mistake to go down and start from here. So this is a one visual cue point. Second, once this is done, the letter language can be in so many different forms. There are many preschool teachers, there are many special educators who develop their own letter language. If you are comfortable with that, you can move ahead with that if it is simpler. For me, I keep it very simple, where I say, okay, well, let's draw a straight line from this dot going down completely to the bottom. Let's come up and draw the first sleeping line at the top and middle sleeping line in the middle. I use the same words. I do not make stories, but the story forms are also okay. Now, this letter is written by the teacher. This is the teacher's part. And then you give it to the student. You do not handle, you do not immediately give the chalk to the student, but you give a wet sponge. So you give a sponge to the student, a small sponge piece, which the student can dip in water, or you can give a dipped sponge depending upon what is your student's reaction. The student will use a wet sponge to trace on the letter that you have written first. Then you are going to, that is called the wet technique. Then you go to the dry technique, where you handle a crumpled tissue paper or a paper towel to the student. And now the student, where he has traced the wet part, he's going to trace again in the similar pattern with a dry part. So standing line, top sleeping line, middle sleeping line. And then the student is, after doing the wet and dry technique, he is now going to try it himself to write with the chalk. When you do this, already one impression is there on the slate for the student to see. The student traces on that impression and makes this letter. This is called the wet dry technique. This technique is very interesting to the student, as it is sensory in nature. And also, this is a very motivational activity as well. Students also know where to start from, because a cue is given very appropriately. The sizing of the slate is also very appropriate. So this is the first technique that you can use in the letter language formation. This is to teach how to write the letters. These are some of the other strategies where the student can learn to write letters in grains. I have used a rice tray in which I have made the student write the letter E. I have used candy sticks to form different letters. One can also use candy sticks and pipe cleaners, because when you have to write a letter like B or D, you use the candy stick to make a standing line. But with the pipe cleaner, you can curve it and make a U, uh, so that it can curve, and then you can make a D. Similarly for B, for C. So any letters which require the curves, you may require a pipe cleaner, or you can cut it out on a mount board. This is another activity where we have used pegboards, where we have asked the child to put pegs in the form of a letter. Also, we have asked the child to trace the letter in either white cream. White cream is edible. So in case you are dealing with children who have orosensory issues, white cream is one of the product that can be used. If not, you can use white foam. Then there are letter formation activities where you can teach the child to trace the letter in the air. So if I want to make a letter C, I'm going to trace a letter C, and I'm going to model it for the child, and then the child has to imitate me. If I have to give a physical prompt, I may do so. I can do so so that the child understands this letter formation with his whole body movement. So air tracing of different letters also can be taught. Once the letter formation has been taught, also you can check by drawing or writing the letter on any part on the forearm, or on the back, and asking the child to guess the letter that has been formed. That will tell you how much of retention and how much of understanding of the formation of the letter the child has received after instruction. This is another activity, a very good activity, which is from called Alphabet 8. It is the one of the brain gym activities, and it is available on YouTube also for you to see. So in this, basically, I will show you. So this is a sleeping or a lazy 8. Now, when we are, this is useful when you are teaching lowercase letters. So when you are teaching lowercase letters, so you can first draw the lazy 8. Once the child has learned to trace around the lazy 8, you can show him that the letter orientation for letter A will go on this line, on this side, on the left side, and then you turn it. For letter B, you will go on the right side. So standing line, and then turn it like this. For letter C, again, you will go on the left side. For letter D, again, you will go on the left side, make a curve, go up and come down. So for letter E, you will go on the right side. So this way, you are teaching the correct orientation of the lowercase letters, and this helps to reduce or eliminate reversals, because you are understanding the orientation of where you have to start the letter. This is called Alphabet 8 or brain gym exercise. It also helps in eye-hand coordination. Practicing, and also a sensory way to trace the letter on a laminated sheet. The feel of the sheet is different, and also do it with a marker pen. So again, the feel of a marker pen is different. It is much more comfortable grip before you shift to the pencil. These are some of the equipments that we use also to develop fine motor skills as well as letter formation. So Theraputty is one of the clay, not it is not clay, it is different from clay as it has different resistances. The strength of a green putty is lesser than the blue putty. The blue putty is lesser than the black putty. So whatever strength the child has, according to that, you use a color, different color of the putties, and ask them to roll and make different letters with the putty. You can use thicker chalks initially if grip is an issue, and then move towards the usual chalk that is available in the market. The Crayola chalks you get, the Crayola actually manufactures very good thick chalks, And I would advise, especially for children with special needs, to start with thick chalk and then move to the regular chalk. Now let's talk about spatial relation activities. Now I want the letter to be in a particular space, so I have to give a boundary to the child. I want the child to understand the boundary in which he has to write. So one of the techniques that I use, and I have found it very useful, is again similar to what we did on the slate. Now these kind of boxes are printed on the page. They are called gray boxes, and they have a cue point. If you can see a cue point over here. So you start the letter at this point. Again, you start with uppercase letters initially before you move to the lowercase letters. So the child knows that he has to be within this space. Again, make a standing line, go to the bottom, top sleeping line, middle sleeping line, and bottom sleeping line. So within the box, the child has to write the letter. You are giving a boundary with the box. You can also highlight or use highlighted paper where you are marking as to where the child has to write. For example, in this yellow line, so let me talk about the lowercase letters also for you. What happens is that in the uppercase letters, once you have finished the uppercase letters and now you want to teach lowercase letters. So when you start teaching lowercase letters, first you choose letters that are easier to teach. So in uppercase letters, C, O, S, V, W. Now, these letters have similar formations in lowercase, but they are smaller in size. That is the difference. So, for example, I teach capital C, which starts from the top line and goes to the bottom line. But I want small c, which will start from the middle line and will go to the bottom line. The formation is the same, only the size is small. And on this paper, highlighted paper, we can easily show them that where you have to write the small letters, in what space you have to write the small letters. So highlighted paper is one of the strategies. Another strategy to teach how in space you're going to how are you going to understand space is, again, drawing different shapes, cutting them out and coloring within that shape. So understanding what is the boundary of each shape, not going out of the boundary, and even while cutting, to take care of that boundary. Organizing things in, like, for example, a stationery box is shown here. For example, it can be even your cupboard, in how much space a particular thing fits. Understanding of the space also helps us in the handwriting process. Let's also talk about eye hand coordination activities. So there are several eye hand coordination activities. Dynamic eye hand coordination activities can be targeting with the ball on a particular glass, bowling. These are all dynamic eye hand coordination activities. Catch and throw of ball. uh, on tabletop, you can use paper folding as a dynamic activity. You can use mazes to understand eye hand coordination activities. I love one of the games for spatial relation, which is Twister, and also it also develops eye hand coordination basically, and also whole body movement. So in that game, there is a mat that is spread on the ground, there is a board, and you direct the child, okay, now you have to put right hand on the red circle, you have to put the right leg on the yellow circle, you have to put the left leg on the blue circle, etc., etc., and the child has to go and attain those postures. Basically, it is a whole multi-sensory movement, because there is proprioception, there is understanding of right and left, there is understanding of eye hand coordination, there is understanding of space. So it becomes a whole sensory motor activity or a multi-sensorial activity. A few other hand activities that you can use are bindi sticking activities. So bindi, you can use stickers or bindis, and you can stick it on one particular sleeping line, or you can put it on one particular standing line which has already been drawn for the child, a diagonal line. So to also understand the orientation, as well as understand the sequence and understand the eye hand coordination. Mosaic craft activities are one of the activities that can be used. Again, you have to choose activities keeping in mind the attention span of the child. If the child has very low attention and poor fine motor skills, I would not go directly for Mosaic. I would go for bigger stickers which are easier for the child to do, so the child can remain motivated to complete the activity. One more thing I want to mention here, and which I feel is very important: whenever we present any task to the child, we have to keep in mind what is the capability of the child. So at the end of the task, the child should achieve success, or child should have an achievement. Child should feel a sense of achievement, then he is more motivated to do the task. So you should choose activities that your child is capable of doing, and not challenge too much that the child feels that he has failed in doing a particular thing. Okay, so let's watch a video on a few letter language formation activities and spatial relation.
Children's songs, sing and move along. Children's songs, take your brain and body strong. Pump it up, bend it down to the alphabet. Work out, cross it over, stretch it out to the alphabet. Work out, move both arms out front, spread your feet out wide. Let's the alphabet and exercise. 2 capital letters. A, slant top to the bottom, across. B, straight line down, curve around. C, start at the top, big curve around. D, straight line down, big curve around. E, straight line down, across. F, straight line down, across. G, start at the top, curve around, across. H, straight line down, across. I, straight line down, across at the top, across at the bottom. J, start at the top, go straight down, curve it. K, straight line down, back to the top, slant left, slant right. L, straight line down, go across, left to right. M, straight line down, up, straight line down. N, straight line down, straight line up. O, start at the top, circle around, all the way.
So these are some of the examples. This is one of the videos which is using full body movement and is explaining letter formations, also having letter language in it. This is also one very good activity that can be done before the child is actually sitting to write on a tabletop, because whole body movement makes you alert and activates your focus. So this is one of the examples. Let's look at language formation activities, and particularly they will also explain the lowercase activities.
Hello, I'm Double Lines. Do you know that letters can be unruly, reckless creatures for new writers to control? Watch these guys battle over whose alpha letter, and you'll see how I help children keep them in order.
I'm the biggest, I'm the tallest, the best, numero uno.
You're not the tallest. I'm just as tall. Plus, I'm simple, classy, and elegant.
Yeah, right. You can't get down like me. None of you go below the line.
Ha ha ha, give me a break. I'm tall and I've got my hump. Hey!
Well, guess what? I'm cute and I'm awesome. I'm the only one here who gets to be
Now imagine how confusing it is for new writers to fit letters together when they're given all sorts of lined paper at school. 1 line, 3 lines, too many lines, dotted lines, no lines. I can help you write your letters correctly. My rules are simple. This is my baseline. This is my midline. The baseline guides placement, and the midline controls the size of letters. This is my top space. This is my middle space. This is my bottom space. Small letters fit in the middle space. Tall letters go in the top space. Descending letters go in the bottom space.
Whoa.
You guys are nothing if we can't read you. Let's all try to work together. Let me help get you into position. Baseline guides placement. Okay, line up. Midline controls the size of letters. Small letters fit in the middle space. Tall letters go in the top space. Descending letters go in the bottom space. Perfect. You're set for success. Double lines help you learn how letters fit together. You'll make them the right size and put them in the right place. You'll be able to keep your letters in order no matter what type of lined paper you have.
I think this video is a great video and it explains so well the concept to the child as to where he has to start from and where the letters will fit. For example, for lowercase letters, the letter A, C, E, R, M, N, V, X, S, Z, etc. They all fit into the middle space. So this is called the middle space and they all fit into the middle space. So initially when we start teaching lowercase letters, first of all, we choose letters that are going to fit into the middle space because the child will be able to recognize the middle space well and it will be less complicated. So going with letters of C, O, S, V, W, and the letters that I mentioned right now, which are the middle space letters. Then coming to the second part, which is the top space letters. So since it is a double line, the space above the line, above the midline is your top space. You can start with giving a cue point. You can always give a dot from where the child has to start, but the child will definitely understand slowly, steadily that this is called the top space. So our tall letters go into the top space. So H, T, B, D, F, these are all tall letters and they start from the top space and end at the bottom line and also called ascending letters. Once we simplify that, then we go on to teaching the descending letters. So descending letters would be where they start at the middle space and move to the base below the baseline or the descending space or the bottom space. Whatever word you want to teach your child, be consistent with the word that you're teaching the child so the confusion doesn't occur. So letters like P, Q, Y and Z written in the descending order, then these are all G, these are all descending letters. And once you have taught the space to the child, then it will be easier for the child to then put this into practice of red and blue line book. Initially, I prefer to use double lines to teach lowercase letters and then move on to the red and blue line if the curriculum of the school requires it. Preferably, I would one double line, max to max 3 lines where there'll be one top red line and 2 blue lines down. But if it's a 4-lined book, then also this is the first method that should be taught to the child. One more thing I would like to mention is that our children struggle with spatial relation or spatial orientation, as we have seen. We saw the different strategies that we can use. Now I have shown you one size of a box with a cue point. For each child, you may have to customize that size because if my child has great difficulty in understanding space and is writing too huge all over the paper, I need to give a bigger box initially, then shifting to the smaller box, and then slowly shifting to the lines instead of directly shifting onto the lines. So I have to customize my program according to the challenge of the child. Okay, so what do we learn from this is that handwriting is a complex skill that activates the different brain regions, like for motor cortex to write because it is a physical movement that is taking place. Visual cortex, so because you are visualizing the letters in your mind, there is a visual perception also involved over here. Temporal lobes, because you are also going to your subconscious, you're also going to into your unconscious memory to understand what was the spelling that I had seen last, how had I learned the letter. So you're tapping your memories to associate the reading and spelling. And therefore handwriting is a whole brain exercise. Also it is a bilateral, also it promotes bilateral integration using right side of the brain plus the left side of the brain. So explicit handwriting interventions such as letter formation and multisensorial teaching over a period of time can help in developing and enhancing the handwriting skills in children. And therefore I believe handwriting is a very important skill that should be focused upon. So thank you, and I will now um, move over to Ms. Shivani. Yeah, I'll stop the share.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Neeta, for explaining the activities in detail and making it an engaging session where you've showed variety of activities that all of them can use. Thank you for an informative one. Now, before we move on to the Q&A, I would like to take you all through few things. You could now check out the links in the chat box to get access to the presentation and also know about the upcoming events and all the resources that are a part of this workshop. The links are now being shared in the chat box. If you have found it to be useful, do share it among your friends and colleagues to spread more awareness about handwriting and the other important things that can help improve the outcomes of children with special needs. A lot of time and effort goes in creating these events and resources. If you have found it to be beneficial, you could share these certificate programs, share the upcoming resources of each workshop, and also become the Abilities Inclusion Champion, where you can bring about a positive change in the community. Also, let me take you through the upcoming events that are a part of the sessions. On the 26th February 2022, we have Improving Attention in Children with ADHD by Ms. Shivani Vadva on 4:30 p.m. India time, 6 p.m. Indonesia time, 7 p.m. Singapore and Philippines time. Then on 5th of March, we have Strategies and Techniques that can help improve handwriting skills for children with academic challenges and special needs by Dr. Neeta Mehta on 5th March 2022, 4:30 p.m. India time, 6 p.m. Indonesia time, and 7 p.m. Singapore and Philippines time. The links are now being shared in the chat box. Do register for these upcoming events and also share it with those who can benefit from it. Now, on to the Q&A aspect. Are you ready for the first question, Neeta ma'am?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So we have this first question by Ms. Farzana Nahid, who wants to know what is the right age to start teaching children with special needs to write?
Okay, so there is, when you have already said that it is a child with special needs, so you will have to see the developmental level of the child. For example, if the child is 6 years of age but operating at 4 years of age, you can start teaching the writing skill even then, but understanding the developmental scale that we have gone through. So you would start, say, even if the child is 6 years or 5 years of age, you're starting at the level of 4 years age. 4 years of age, you can start with diagrams, standing lines, sleeping lines, and move forward to the letter formations. So anyways, there is always a certain lag where child with special need is concerned. So according to that, you have to start the program.
So identifying the Yes, ma'am. So you meant that identifying the developmental age of the child is extremely important to know how to move ahead. Thank you. Now we have a question by Gloria Gian, who wants to know that children are sometimes develop the handedness, right? The right-handed and the left-handedness. Is it appropriate to correct the handedness of children?
So the handedness develops according to the dominant lobe of the brain. So for example, if I'm left-handed, my right side brain is dominant, whereas if I'm left dominant, if I'm left dominant, it is the right side of the brain. If I'm right dominant, it is the left side of the brain. So the skills that you develop according to which part of or which lobe of your brain is more dominant. So to correct the handedness of the child, only because the child is left-handed, to shift towards the right hand, it also affects the child at the level, because child's right brain may be more dominant, and you're trying to change that particular part. It creates a little difficulty even later on in life, and it creates a challenge for the child. So I am not in the favor of changing the handedness if the dominance has already been established. But for example, if there is a problem with motor planning, not understanding which hand to use, and there is inconsistency in the use of hand, that sometimes there is a right hand, sometimes it is a left hand, then definitely you have to develop dominance in one hand. It can also be a part of dyspraxia, and therefore that needs to be trained. But if the dominance is well established at 6 years of age, or the child is mostly doing all his activities with the left hand, and it is showing you that yes, the dominance is developing left-handed and right dominant brain, then I would not try to change it, and I would not prefer also that it should be changed. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for throwing insight onto this. We have a question by Sophia Theo, who wants to know that there are times while writing, children do reversals. So, any strategy that can help in correcting the reversals in children?
So as I mentioned during the workshop only, the alphabet 8 strategy is very good for the child to understand the correct orientation of the letters. And also it helps in reducing and eliminating reversal. So alphabet 8 is one of the strategy one can use. Also using the correct spaces, like for the reversals, like the cue points in the box that I have explained, that it starts only from this cue point, it starts from the top line, it starts from this dot. So that also helps in changing the reversal. Also understanding the letter language on where it is starting from. For example, when you write letter D, you want to say make a C, go up, come down and turn. Whereas while you're writing B, you want to say make a standing line and then make a turn. So you are using the correct letter language to get through to the child, and that also helps in reducing the reversals to a greater extent. I hope that helps.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a few more case-specific questions. Another one is by Bhavini Dabdwa, who wants to know that while writing, her child does not leave any space between the words. How can we teach children to leave space between words?
So that shows us that there is a problem where the child is not understanding the position in space, as I explained during the workshop, that when we are writing a letter, I have written N. Now where to place the E appropriately, I'm not able to understand. So initially I would have to give cue points. Either I can personally sit with the child and guide the child on the next letter, and that cue can be a dot, or I can also give her small squares depending upon if the spatial relation is intact. If it is not, then bigger squares, and to write the letter in each square, and then reducing the size of the squares, ultimately eliminating the squares and going on to the double line. And in the double line, giving cue points initially till the child is ready to be taken off that prompt also. So initially you make the process easier. So you take one step down. If you're already using a 2-lined book or a 3-lined book, go back to squares. First ask the child to write in those small squares, and then move on to the lined book. So the child gets enough practice and starts understanding what is position in space and what is it that you're trying to get through to him. I can't hear you, Ms. Shivani.
Identifying the child's level and taking it step by step with every child will be helpful. And these activities where cues are given will make the child more vigilant to know where he or she should start from. Now we have a next question by Sankit Jain and Athya Maria, who want to know that sometimes children are not motivated to write. They become lazy and unmotivated. Can you suggest some tips in which we could pull them towards developing an interest in writing?
So as I said, that the motivation gets affected when the challenge is too much. So one is where if we will create a sensory environment for the child, that is a very motivating factor for the child to join in. The video that you saw where there was a whole body movement to write letters, whole body movement to make him understand, say, standing lines, sleeping lines. It is where you are playing and working together. Initially, you could start with that to motivate the child. Then go on to the sensory techniques to form letters. That is also motivating to the child. Then go on to the wet, dry, try technique. And then go on to the actual paper and pen. The child is not motivated enough because the child finds the activity only very challenging initially, when you are giving something that may not be the child's capability, as I mentioned in the workshop. So find out that at what are the preferred activities the child likes. If the child likes movement, please move towards songs, move towards whole body movements to teach the letters. If the child likes sensory play, then please use clay, please use therapeutic, use grains, use paints to first bring about the letter formations, and then use the slate and the chalk wet dry try technique before moving on to the paper and pen. So make the activity interesting, plus also start teaching with what is easier to learn. So start with uppercase letters and then move on to lowercase letters. So again, as I'm saying, move according to the capability of the child. Then the child will be motivated to perform the task. Also, when the child is not motivated enough and attention span is low, do not keep the session too long. When you're practicing handwriting skill, that time think that if the child has lower attention span, I do not want to take a full 40-minute session. I can even break it down into a 20-minute session with sufficient breaks in between, so the child is motivated to come and learn. And then increase the time slowly and steadily till the child's sitting tolerance also improves over the activity. So that will bring the child back much more, rather than keeping on challenging the child to do a particular thing which anyways he's finding it a challenge.
Identifying the challenges is the key to go when you have to help these children. Now we have another question, ma'am, by Jasper Manaba and others, who want to know that while we are doing all these activities, a lot of fine motor skills are used. This child whom we are dealing with does not have the fine motor skills to have developed the handwriting. So if fine motor skills have not developed, can you suggest strategies that can help improve handwriting other than the ones that have been there for using fine motor skills?
So fine motor skills is a prerequisite to develop handwriting skill. Why, when you say that fine motor skills are not developed, then we need to check that why they have not developed. Is it that the proximal musculature or the proximal shoulder strength is weak, which is not allowing the fine motor skills to work efficiently? What exactly in the fine motor skill is affected? I need to know that. Is the grip that the child is using not appropriate? Is that coming in the way of his handwriting skill? Then that is the thing that has to be tackled. Is the pressure gradient a problem? Then we have to use strategies to make the pressure gradient optimal. But there is nothing like elimination of fine motor skills and using other skills to develop handwriting. Fine motor skills are very, very essential to the development of handwriting. Definitely, if they are poor in nature, there are some adaptive devices that can be given, but a proper evaluation is necessary as to what in fine motor skills is not helping in the development of writing. So more details would be required. Yes.
Yes. So knowing what the child is going through, it's case specific. That's why individualized plans come handy. And now we have a question. Since we have been speaking about handwriting and dominance as well, so there is Shirberg and Dolker who wanted to know tips, especially for children with left-handedness. Will these strategies be applicable, or do we have to make certain changes or modify them?
Fortunately, the program that I use in my practice, the HWT program, takes left-handedness into consideration. And the double lines that you see, the gray boxes that you see, the wet, dry, try technique that you see are very, very easily doable, even by children who are left-handed. When you make a worksheet, or when you make writing program for the child who is left-handed, you can help him by giving him a reference point even on the right side. So for example, if you're teaching letter A to a child who is left-handed, and he's starting from the left side, he has a cue point on the left side, or he's copying the letter A, which is written towards his left, and he's now moving forward. So he wrote the letter A. He also has a reference point on the right where the letter A is written. So the child doesn't have to keep looking back like this, because anyways the left hand is blocking what has been written on the left hand side. So he has a reference point even on the right side. So that is one very good part of these worksheets that we use, that there is a reference point for them to start. And besides that, the gray boxes, the double lines, these are with cue points, are also helping the children with left-handers. So the modifications are not that many that you need to do for left-handers. There are pens and there are pencils that are available for children who are left-handed. But more or less in my practice, this much suffices, and I don't really have to go into adaptive devices, more or less.
Thank you so much for throwing light on that, ma'am. Now we have a question by Millie Chakravarti, who wants to know that if we are teaching children those alphabets which are simple to write, like O, V, isn't it there a possibility that the child will learn these alphabets in that order only, especially in case of children with special needs?
See, the sequence of the letters, we are not teaching the sequence of the letters. We are teaching them to write the letters. The sequence of the letters can be taught on a pegboard through rhymes like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or through puzzles, jigsaw puzzles. So we are not affecting the sequence of the handwriting directly. If that is something that this is not something that has come in the way of my practice till now, but say if you think this would happen, then I would give different page for each letter. So today I'm practicing C and O, tomorrow I'll practice S and V, and I would not show any correlation between each of them. It's just the writing skill that you are practicing, that this is the way you write C. You're not telling them that O comes after C or V comes after C. For that, you can use many different techniques to teach sequencing. Here you are just concentrating on the writing program, and you can use different pages and with single letters on each page. But even though we have used same letter C, O, S, V, W on similar pages, this kind of problem has not come into at least my practice till now.
Okay, it's basically more of understanding the concept rather than the sequence. Thank you, ma'am. Now, when we've been speaking about handwriting, a few participants named Jin Song, Moisi Lee, and all want to know when can we start the introduction of cursive writing skills. So when we have taught them print, when is the right age to teach the cursive writing?
So once, at least where children with special needs are concerned, only once they have mastered the writing in print form, you move to the cursive form. But if for a neurotypical child, usually cursive writing should start at the end of first standard. So at around the age of 6 years of age, you can start introducing cursive writing. Again, there is a way to introduce cursive writing, the way I spoke about how you're doing it in print writing, how you're using the gray boxes, how you're using the double lines. You in cursive writing also, you have to teach the specific loops on how, for example, you're going to connect U and R, how you're going to connect E and E, how you're going to use the loops in the upper part of the segment, how you're going to use the loops in the lower part of the segment, where you will connect at a lower level, where you will connect at the upper level. So first the loops are taught. Once the loops are taught, then the letters are taught, and then words are taught. So there is again a progression to how cursive writing has to be taught. So at least for children with special needs, you wait till they achieve print optimally, and then you move towards cursive. Otherwise, for a neurotypical child, you can start at 6 years of age.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this insight. Now we have a question by Rishma Khan, who wants to know that how can we improve the writing speed of a child who is a slow learner?
Okay. So when you have already said the child is slow learner, so one again, there is a issue, there may be issues with sensory processing. There may be issues with processing the language information that is being given to the child. So where handwriting is concerned, definitely it is going to be slightly slower than a neurotypical child, but I would go with the program in a similar manner only, but provide enough time for the slow learner to move um, for the task that I have given. Again, I would do timed tasks for him. And I would time it in such a way that I know that the child will achieve it in this particular time. And with practice, that time factor will reduce. But we have to keep, again, it is case based, so can't say much on this. But definitely, when I know that the child has issues with processing language and processing information, I'm going to take that into consideration even for my writing task. I hope that helps.
The child's abilities are what matters here. And now we have a next question by Ida, Yasmin, and Ahmed, who wants to know that when you spoke about the 90 to 90 posture, is it very important while doing writing exercises? She does a lot of writing exercises on the floor, laying down or on her tummy, or prone, as the child might have a motor problem. Do I still need to put them on the chair and table? Is her question, ma'am.
So yes, there are many writing positions that children take. They may lie down on their abdomen and they may write. They may sit on the floor and they may write. But if the core is not activated well enough, it brings it works on the energy factor. It will use a lot of your energy in terms of other postures where you're laying down on your abdomen or where you are sitting on the floor. And if you're slouching, if you're sitting on the floor with the correct support or wedge support, or if your core is activated, then the amount of energy that you spend and the muscles that you use, then they are correct in that posture. But if you are using different postures where you're using different muscles and where the energy consumption is higher, the uh, attention to writing will reduce, and maybe even if the writing task is taking place, the endurance is going to reduce over there. So I would prefer that a child sits in a correct posture, one, so that core is activated. Second, grounding takes place where both feet are on the ground, so focus is there, and the child can continue the task of writing for a longer time versus in other postures.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we have the next question by Suneja Imoru. Can you help explain how can we make the child not to put too much pressure with pencil while writing?
Definitely, this is one of the subjects, upcoming subjects in the strategies and techniques in the upcoming webinar that is on March 5th. We are going to go more into detail about that. But there are various strategies that you use when there is a pressure gradient is much more than required. So first, we have to make the child aware of the fact that the pressure that you are using is too much and it is causing either the page to tear, or either the print is coming on the on the third page from what you have written, or on the fifth page. So usually one of the strategies I will describe to you is, if the child is already writing, then you can use a carbon paper under the paper on which he is writing. Ask the child to write and see where the impression is coming. If the pressure is too much, the impression will come much more on, say, on the fifth page. Now I'm making you aware that the pressure that you are exerting is too much. It is coming to, the impression is coming on the fifth page. I want you to write a little lightly, so the impression now comes on the third page. Now I want to write, I want you to write even more lightly, that the impression comes only on the first page. So you are training the child to adapt to from going from high pressure to the lower pressure. But you are making him aware by showing him visually that, see what is happening when you are exerting a high pressure. You can also show that while asking the child to write on a foam sheet. You get a foam paper, and if the child is writing with too much pressure, there'll be too hard an impression on the foam paper. Again, you are making the child aware that I want you to lighten the pressure on this foam sheet. So you can try pressing a little less than what you're already. So basically, you are making the child mindful about the pressure that he's exerting, and you are giving him different sensory objects to first master from going from high pressure to low pressure and then moving again to pen and paper. So these are two strategies that I have given you, but we're going to speak about it in detail in the next session.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing a few strategies that they could apply in a handy manner. Now we have a question by Karchu Chudi and Agha, who wanted to know that when we are talking about a child having difficulty in writing, and we spoke about age-wise, milestones, how will we know that the child has difficulty in writing? Is there any checklist that will help to identify the same?
So there can be two checklists. One according to the developmental age, as we have discussed, where you can mark that what is it that the child is not able to do according to the age criteria that is given. Second checklist can be on formation of letters, pressure gradient, eye-hand coordination, the skills that we spoke about, spatial relation, position in space. So you have to tick mark what is there, and you have to tick mark or you have to cross out what is not there, so you know which areas you have to work upon. So that can be one of the checklists, and developmental can be another checklist for handwriting.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing the checklist, which could be helpful. Now we have a question by Evelyn Sandoval and Guerrero, who wants to know that how long should the intervention continue before we can decide if the child has progressed? When will we know whether the intervention is working or not, or helping the child or not?
So this is a very subjective question. So with my children who I've worked and who are children with special needs, who are children on the autism spectrum, who I have worked with online, obviously the rate at which each one has progressed has been different. Even the challenges have been different, but they have come to a point where they have progressed sufficiently enough to write the uppercase and the lowercase letters, and then they would move on to words. So it is a very subjective question as to how much time should we wait. But also you should see the ability of the child. If you feel that after you have done the teaching process for the uppercase letters, lowercase letters, have also built on developing some attention skills, in spite of that the process is a little difficult, then probably you could try typing as one of the um, intervention, provided the child is interested in that also. Usually if you give enough time to each strategy, you get results. Only it is not time bound. It for some it may take 8 sessions, for some it has taken 16 sessions, for some it can take a little more, but it has taken place, the progress has taken place.
It completely depends on the child's ability. Knowing what are the difficulties and challenges will help understand how long the intervention has to be given to the child. Now we have a question from Mobishra Rahman, who wanted to know that how can she help her daughter to write neatly, because her daughter writes in very small handwriting. How can she improve that?
So when the complaint is, or when you're talking about small handwriting, one, we need to see that when it is small handwriting, is it overlapping on the other letter? Is the space that is being used is something that we are not understanding about the spatial relation? Then I would first work on the spatial relation skills. It may not be neat and tidy because it is overlapping or it is not legible enough. So I would um, give the grayscale boxes which I showed you during the workshop, and first start writing on the grayscale boxes. Then go to double line, which may be more in size, and then you start reducing the size so that the child understands that this is a bigger space, this is a smaller space, and this is the optimum space in which you have to write, and you have to leave sufficient space between each letter. As I said, the square boxes, then the cue points, they would help the child understand where and how, and that would automatically show you on the neatness factor, that it will improve the neatness factor and it will make the handwriting more tidy.
Using these strategies will help to get the correct formation and sizes of the handwriting. We have now a question by Romina Grace Cruz, who wants to know your insight on which do you prefer to teach first, letters in uppercase or letters in lowercase?
As I already mentioned, letters in uppercase because they always start at the top and they are simpler to teach and less complicated than teaching lowercase letters initially. Also, developmentally, children are learning standing line, sleeping line first instead of the curves, the circles that come in place. So, I would first go into the uppercase letters rather than the lowercase letters.
I hope they got the answer. It's ma'am's insight is teaching uppercase lowers rather than the lowercase letters. Now we have a question by Ashita Del Rosario, who wants to know how can I motivate the child to distinguish between this lower and uppercase letters, an extension to the previous question.
Uh, the video that you saw, one is the double lines video that we showed during the workshop that talks, you will see how they're explaining the positioning of lowercase letters. One by that itself, it will make it very clear that the lowercase letters come in this middle space between the middle line and the base line. Then this is the descending letter, this is the ascending letter. Whereas when you talk about uppercase letters, they always start at the top space and end on the baseline. There is nothing as tall letters or descending letters where uppercase is concerned. Only when you finish all uppercase letters will you move to lowercase letters. So when you finish uppercase A to Z, then you are moving to lowercase A to Z. That itself is also a discrimination. Initially, when you're shifting from uppercase to lowercase, you're teaching similar letters but different in size, and you're giving um, appropriate lines for that, the one we saw in the highlighted paper or where we see the middle space. So I think that itself is a discriminator, and the child usually gets that. I hope that helps.
Using the line concept will give more clarity to the child while learning letters. We have a question by Grace Cruzid Cesario, who wants to know, is there a right time to teach the punctuation marks to children while writing?
Yes, absolutely. That will go according to the grade wise scenario. So as soon as the uppercase and the lowercase letters are done and you're going into sentence formation or you're going into noun formations, that time definitely you would want to teach appropriate punctuation so that the base is right. Second, you want to teach that the letters start after the margin and not very far away from the margin. Again, because you want that space to be right and you want the spatial relation concept to come in right. So it would be the right age to even start as soon as you are starting to teach words or nouns or sentences. So punctuation would definitely come into the picture.
It's a part of the setted structure. Thank you so much, ma'am. There's another question. We'll take the last one for the day. It is by Maria Noreen, who wants to know how can teachers collaborate with parents to help students engage in writing in a virtual learning environment?
It's a great question. Actually, during the COVID times, we have collaborated with parents only, and we have gone through the online handwriting sessions. So usually for our handwriting online sessions, we have a certain criteria that we need the parent to be there with the child. We send a we do the assessment during the first session, and we also do an interview call with the parent before the session starts, so we understand a little bit of difficulties. We ask the parent to send some photographs and samples of the child's handwriting, so we are aware of what the difficulties may be, and we send some sample worksheets that the parent prints out and keeps while this for the session. If the child is able to bear the screen presence, is able to be there during the online session with the screen on, then the screen is kept on and direct instruction is given to the child while the parent helps the child to do it. If the child is not able to take the direct instruction during virtual session, the parent is asked to wear an AirPod so that the instruction is given to the parent and the parent makes the child do it. And the parent is continuously guided by our therapists. So for the correct formation and for the correct practice. And also after that, every day 15 minutes of homework is given till the next session, which would be in a week's time or 10 days time, so that practice occurs, and practice would make it a little more perfect. If the child is not able to bear the presence of another person, many children even don't want to see you on the video, they get disturbed and distracted, then the video of the therapist is kept off, but the parent and the child are sitting together, and the therapist is still giving instruction to the parent while the child writes it. If the child is able to do it on their own, then well and good, direct instruction is given to the child. So this is the model that we had followed for our virtual sessions.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this elaborative response from you of how in virtual settings we can improve the handwriting of children. Yes, thank you overall for your engaging Q&A. I'm sure the audience have loved it. There are gratitude messages for you in the chat box. I thank you for patiently answering all their queries, and I thank the participants for being there throughout. Now, I wanted to reiterate about our upcoming events. Stay tuned for them. Do check out the links in the chat box. We have the upcoming event on improving attention in children with ADHD on 26th of February by Ms. Shivani Vadva. And then we have strategies and techniques to improve handwriting skills for children with academic challenges and special needs on 5th of March by Dr. Neeta Mehta. They'll be at 4:30 p.m. India time, 6 p.m. Indonesia time, and 7 p.m. Singapore and Philippines time. Do check out the links in the chat box and share it with whoever can benefit from it. Book your slots, and we hope to see you at the session. Also, the feedback link of today's session would now also be shared in the chat box again. Do give us your feedback. Before we end, Dr. Neeta, your words for our participants.
Thank you very much for being a part of the session and being patient listeners. And I hope that all these strategies are useful to you. And with patience and with practice, I'm sure you will get results. So thank you very much, Ability team and the participants.
Thank you so much, Dr. Neeta. Also, dear participants, I request you, your attendance has been captured by the team and you would definitely be receiving your certificates. I request you not to put in your email addresses in the chat box. And if you have signed up for the workshop already, you can go on to the Ability website in the events and also take your certificate download from there. Thank you. Until we see you for the next time, it's a big bye from Team Ability.
Thank you.